Well, Mr. Secretary, to both you and Secretary Armitage, I mean, I would prefer that Dr. Rice here would be here tomorrow, but Dick, you would be a fabulous national security advisor. You would be a dynamite one. So, that said, let me say that with great respect, I'm having difficulty with we spent 8 months developing a plan because I don't think that's the central problem here. And my recollection of the presidential campaign, and by the way, my history was my actions in presidential campaigns were kept intact in 2000. I supported the loser in the primary, so my memory may not be very good, but I don't recall terrorism being much, if even an issue at all, in the 2000 campaign, and in part because it really, even though it was on the policymakers' minds, they were aware of the threat and they were aware of what's going on, but I just don't recall it being a driving force in either one of the campaigns. Now, maybe I've got that wrong, but I don't think so. And I think the central problem, Mr. Secretary, is something that all three of us have dealt with from time to time, and that was the use of military force in dealing with Al-Qaeda. I said earlier to Secretary Albright, I think it was one of the big mistakes of the Clinton administration. In fact, I think it was also a fault of the Bush administration, although I'm sympathetic that the Secretary of Defense was not a primary actor in the war on terrorism. Indeed, striking, his recollection of the briefings on Al-Qaeda were considerably different than yours. Now, his recollection may be different when he's testifying, but he just didn't. It wasn't as clear, and it shouldn't be, because under Presidential Directive 62, which was signed by President Clinton in 98, excuse me. That presidential directive didn't give the Department of Defense a primary role in the war on terrorism. It just didn't, in counterterrorism activity. So I've read the cautionary concern that General Zinni had, who was CINC of CENTCOM at the time, and other military leaders. I've had, in 12 years' experience in the United States Senate, many times to walk out wondering if I voted the right way, and among those moments was Desert Storm 1, where I'm relatively certain today that I did vote the wrong way, but it came from a concern for body bags coming home, and would we be able to sustain the effort, the political effort. And I was likewise concerned about Bosnia. I ended up supporting the effort in Bosnia and Kosovo, but those who say we shouldn't be skeptical or concerned about use of military force, I think, have got it wrong. We should be, and we should, it seems to me, always wonder. But I wonder if you see it that way. I mean, I wonder if you see that if you look at from '93, when World Trade Center 1 was hit the first time, and through September of 2001. Al-Qaeda never suffered a military response from us, never, other than on August 20th, which was a relatively small military attack, a very limited military attack with absolutely no anticipation of boots on the ground being involved. And I'm just wondering, I appreciate that I'm asking a question as if you were Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, and perhaps even President, not just Secretary of State, but I wonder if you see it that way as well, that our reluctance to give the Secretary of Defense and the military a more prominent role in counterterrorism efforts contributed to our lack of preparation. Because the bottom line for me is it pains me to have to say that on the 11th September, that 19 men with less than $500,000 defeated every single defensive mechanism we had in place. Utterly. It wasn't even a close call. They defeated everything we had in place on the 11th September with hardly, it seems to me, any doubt about their chance of success. And I just stop there and give you a chance to tell me what you think went wrong.
Let me speak to our administration, and I'll speak more generally to get to the heart of your question. I think in our deliberations and our meetings, and Mr. Armitage may wish to speak to this, Pentagon was starting to develop plans. It was looking at contingencies that it might have to deal with. You can pursue this with Secretary Rumsfeld this afternoon. But in this whole period, to say that use military force to get Al-Qaeda when it wasn't going to be a surgical strike. Anybody who thinks that, Osama bin Laden might just be laying around somewhere and you can go pick them up. Well, maybe. Good luck. But that's a wish, not a strategy or not a military action. So you would have had really to go after al-Qaeda by going after the Taliban, and that meant invading another country. And it meant invading another country without the support of any of the surrounding countries where you would need some access to get there. And so I don't know that in this period from 93 through the summer of 2001, you had a sufficient political base and sufficient political understanding both here and in the international community that would have given you a basis for saying that we know enough about al-Qaeda, we know enough about the Taliban, that we are going in to invade this country and remove this threat.
Can I respond to that? Because
Just a minute response.
yeah, a minute response, because Secretary Albright said the same thing. And I was there in '91 when you and former President Bush and Secretary Cheney went to the world and persuaded the world that we needed to drive Iraq out of Kuwait. Public opinion wasn't on your side either when you began. Public opinion wasn't on the side of President Clinton when he suggested that we needed to intervene in Bosnia. It wasn't on the side of the administration when they decided to intervene in Kosovo. It's rare that public opinion is on the side of a president or a political leader when it comes to using military force, except after the fact. So it does seem to me to be, in many ways, sort of a straw man position to say, gee, it would have been exceptionally difficult. Yes, it would have been exceptionally difficult, but history is replete of examples where political leaders made a decision in spite of public opinion being on the other side and saying, I've got to persuade people because I see it being an urgent necessity.
I don't think that in the case of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan during this period, it rose to that level of urgent necessity that people thought, we've got to go do this now, even if it includes major invasion of a country without the support of any of the surrounding countries. Do we have a sufficient cause and justification to undertake such action? And previous administration can speak for itself, but they spoke for themselves. They said they didn't see it. And frankly, in our first several months in office, as we looked at this, we realized that it might come to that. That's the realization we come to. And you come to these kinds of realizations after a great deal of study and debate. You don't walk in on the first day and say we have decided this is what has to be done. So we discussed it with all of the experts who were in the previous administration and stayed over. We then brought in our new people. Mr. Armitage came in after 2 months. General Taylor came over after a while. A lot of new people came in, and we put together a more comprehensive policy. And we reached the conclusion in early September that it might come to that. And we have to understand that we might have to go in and take this kind of large-scale military action if that was the only way to eliminate this threat.
Congressman
There's a
Rowland.
record that I have of our discussions in the deputies in the July timeframe where we began to discuss actually using military measures. If all the rest was not successful, that's a long ways from having a plan and a military plan. But these were things that, as the Secretary has indicated, we talked about, we debated, and we realized eventually we were going to have in our quiver.